Well, hello, friends. Welcome to From Busy to Rich, the podcast designed to help inspire advisors to increase their profitability and the quality of life, not just for themselves, but for those they serve. I'm Justin Lakin. With me always, Wes Young. Today, we have a truly special episode planned for you guys. I'm excited to get into it. Don't want to give away too much. So, Wes, I'm going to actually hand it over to you, let you do a quick introduction of our special guest today.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to have Jon Acuff on our podcast here. Those of you who don't know Jon's work, you're going to love it. You're going to become super familiar with it because we're going to talk a lot about some really cool stuff today that so synergizes with the things that we talk about here on the podcast all the time. And Jon, one of the things, well, first, just thanks, man, for being a part of the podcast. So happy you're here today.
Yeah, totally. It was fun to see you recently at a New York Life event. So this was an easy one to say yes to.
Absolutely. No, that's great, man. And what I'd love to do, just for those who may not be familiar with you, I'd love to take a minute and just a second to kind of talk about what things are like for you today, what you do day in, day out, multiple best-selling books. And then I'd love to rewind it a little bit and talk about what things were like when you got started into what you're doing, because I think it's really easy sometimes for people to view someone in a snapshot of their life, of where they are, and just not be able to disconnect with the starting point, which I think is always a big gap between those two. And before we'll dive into a lot of the stuff in the book that I think is just gold here. And before we do all that, though, Justin had a really, really important question he wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so I am going to preposition a little bit. My wife is amazing, and she is, very gracious at losing, but she's not a good winner. Like if she wins, like she holds that over me and I'll never live it down. Like anything, it doesn't matter what it is. Like you could be eating faster and she holds it over me. So with that, like one of your stories popped out. What was it like for you to learn? And what was that experience like for you to learn after all these years that you're just not a Jeep guy? From your
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point we were far enough in the marriage that I always say that like, marriage is about closing the gap between when your spouse tells you something that's true and when you would believe it and admit it. So like when we were first married, that might have been a grumpy week, like where she would say like, "Oh, hey, I think you should try this or do this." I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" And I'd be a grump. Now it's about an hour. So like the other day I brought down 17 chapters of a new book and she liked 2. And was like, the rest of these are terrible. And 23 years in, I'm able, I went back up to my office. I was like, what does she know? And then I went back an hour later. I was like, yeah, I think you're right. You're right. That was a good call. So yeah, anytime Jenny gives me feedback, I try to accept it as fast as I can because she knows me better than anybody else. So the story you're talking about was me going, yeah, I need to get a Jeep with like a snorkel and like a ladder and like tires the size of the moon. And she was like, what are you even talking about? The joke she said was like, you hate when you step on a melted ice cube in socks in our house. Like, you're like, oh man, this is terrible. And she's like, you're not a Jeep guy. Like, and I ended up getting a little VW GTI, which was like a go-kart. And I just had so much fun in that car. I was just Tokyo drifting everywhere. And so that was, yeah. But I would say if she had said that like year 1, I probably would have been grumpier. Year 20, I guess is when she said it, or year 18. I'm like, yeah, she does know me and she does want the best for me. So like, okay, I'm willing to listen to that. That's such a funny opening question.
Yeah, it's something that kind of resonated underlying to the whole book, right? Is this concept of like too often, especially when you're trying to like plan your future and vision off of things from a futuristic perspective, which you kind of flip the script on that and looking back on, I know we're going to talk more about that, but just like trying to define stuff without having been there, right? Like it's one thing to have a goals when you've got no experience within it, right? Like you're looking for things and having a vision. But when you've got history there, and then you got great people around you, like sounds you do. My wife's very similar in the sense of like, she'll tell me like, no, I don't think that's going to be a good thing for you.
Yeah.
And she's right. Like she's right. So yeah, that sound resonated again with the book. And
that's perfect. That's perfect.
So Jon, tell us a little bit, just for our audience here. This is a podcast for financial advisors that want to help increase profitability and quality of life, not just for themselves or for those that they serve. And I'd love it if you give a little bit of background and just what's a day in the life, a year in the life of you like now, and then what was the natural, easy, handed to you transition from the starting point to where you find yourself today?
Yeah. So currently, it's like anybody else. I run a small business. So I've had my own business for 11 years now. And I do two things primarily. I write books and then I go talk about the books, like in the most general kind of sense of it. So you and I connected because New York Life brought me in. I think I've done 2 or 3 events with them and said, hey, talk to our people about this concept, about this book you wrote about, this research you did. So that's what the day looks like. So it depends on the season I'm in, but if it's writing season, I'm writing in the morning, I'm doing meetings in the afternoon or podcasts in the afternoon, or I'm working with clients. So like today I had a meeting with my publisher to talk about a new book we've got coming out. I had a team meeting where we kind of talked about our projects. And then right after this, I'm talking to a CEO who I spoke to their company, and she said, hey, I'd love some tips on how to improve my own public speaking. Like, can you coach me a little in that? And it's something I love to do. Speaking is, one of my favorite things. So I said, of course, that'd be really fun. Versus where it was. So now I graduated college in 98. So at this point, that's 26 years. So the first chunk of my career was writing advertising inside big brands. So Bose, Staples, Home Depot, Auto Trader. I was a corporate copywriter. And so I learned a lot. And I think that's why I really enjoy going to talk to big companies, is because I've sat in those big companies. I understand the framework of that and the people that are sitting there. And so I spent, 10 to 15 years doing that. And then from there, got to write my first book and kind of grow it like bit by bit by bit by bit. But I always, the funny thing is, the problem with the internet is you see the before and the after and rarely the middle. And there's a lot of middle. And the middle never stops. That's the other thing. Like, I know your team, when you hit goals, you don't go, okay, we did the thing. We'll just the next year, we don't have to no, you're already working on the next middle. So I always try to tell people, like, I'm writing my 11th book right now, and I'm in that stage where I hate it. It's so hard. Like, the idea's not there yet, and the idea's bad, and it's messy, and I'm like, all these words are dumb. Like, there's not a single good word, So I'm kind of slogging through that part of it, but I know that's the price to pay for the part where eventually I get to hold a finished book, and so I'm willing to pay that price at this point.
That's awesome. Well, I'd love to talk. I want to talk about your latest book that you released, All It Takes Is a Goal. And for those of you listening, we're doing a giveaway for those. So Justin will tell you about how to get. We're going to give away 10 copies of that because it's a phenomenal book. Our team has read it collectively, and we work through that. Now, we work through all of your stuff that you do, but I'd love it if you could just kind of tee up a little bit of the premise behind the book. And then I want to dive into some of these things that I just think are so relevant and so instantly actionable to help increase profitability and quality of life for those that are listening.
I appreciate you saying that. And it's funny, a lot of advisors have used it with clients. There's different books and different subjects hit different markets differently. And what's been fun is that I've had a lot of advisors like you say, hey, I was able to really dial in what somebody really wants to do financially because I used the best moments list tool. Like I was able to. So the premise of the book is essentially, how do you tap into your full potential? So it's a look back and going, okay, I really believe everybody's capable of more than they think. I meet especially a lot of people in their 40s that would say, like, if a person has 10 gears, they think they're operating at gear 8, and often they're at 3. And you need to encourage, like, wait a second. I know, like I always say, I know more leaders who are struggling from boredom than burnout. We in our culture over-label things burnout. And I meet very few people who have given their all, chase their purpose, chase their passion, and then burn out. I meet a lot of people who aren't living up to their full capabilities and feel stuck and kind of stagnant. So the book essentially says, how do you figure out where you want to go and then how to get there? Like, what are some practical ways? And so it opens up with this activity that Justin mentioned is counterintuitive in the sense that most of the time when you sit somebody down and say, what do you want to do with your life? They go, dream the next 20 years, dream the next 30 years. And it's actually a very intimidating question. It paralyzes me personally. And I write books about this stuff. When somebody goes, blank piece of paper, what do you want to be doing in 30 years? I go, I'm 48. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up yet. I should, right? And then you think everybody else did. And because of kind of culture and the internet, you go, yeah, I bet that guy knew at 18 exactly what was going to happen at 28 and 38 and 48, and I'm the only one who doesn't know. And so the book flips the premise of staring into the future and instead goes, what have you loved in the last 10 years? What have you loved in the last 20 years? What if we made a list of that and figured out, are there patterns there? And then could you do more of that going forward? And so it takes advantage of this amazing education in you that's real. Because a lot of people's goals fail because, similar to me being like, I got to get a Jeep, they don't even know what they really care about. And they're running so hard sometimes, they've never stopped to go, oh, you're right. And you see people get into positions where like they'll be put in charge of managing 10 people and they hate people. And you go, how'd you get in that position? You're like, they never stop to go, what's my favorite part of growing this business? Oh, these 3 things. Yeah. I should never graduate from those. I should get really excellent and master those 3 things versus go, I'm now going to be a manager leading other people who are doing the things I love that I no longer get to do. Like, you want the worst micromanager in the world, take somebody out of their gift and make them manage other people who are getting to do the gift. Like, it's torture. It's torture. So that's what the book's about.
Man, I love, and in particular, this was my favorite section of the book, was the rearview mirror exercise, which I just think is so powerful. I going back found this manifested in a lot of different ways. There's a guy named Brett Ledbetter. He coaches like in the athletic world. Like Coach K was one of his clients. He does it on the mental side of the game.
Pretty good client. It's pretty good client.
Pretty good guy, right?
He's done all right. Both of them seem to have done all right.
Eked it out. And one of the things he does, and one of his favorite parts that reminded me so much of this exercise, which is just massive, is he has these collegiate athletes that, if you're a collegiate athlete, you were the best athlete in your high school. Now, when you're in college, everybody was the best athlete in their high school, right? And so these people, a lot of times, particularly the very elite in high school, they go into a deep state of depression, and they go through it's like just almost like their affects performance, but certainly their mood, their health. And he has them do what he didn't label it this way, but it's the review mirror exercise. He says, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back and I want you to write out all the things that you accomplished from the time you were 15 to now that you were proud of, that gave you just a thrill. It's just a wonderful moment. And so it's like, I was an All-American, or I did this, our team accomplished these things. Got a Division I scholarship, or whatever it might be. And after they write all these things out, he says, now, if someone wants to go back and tell the 15-year-old version of yourself, all these things are going to happen, do you think they'd be happy? 100% of the time they answer the same way. Absolutely. And then he has a follow-up question. He says, so why aren't you? And I think what you wrote about in the book, and it's just so powerful, I'm seeing it in our life, is that capacity to go back and like list your best moments, to look in the rearview mirror and think about all the wonderful things that took place. For me, it does a couple things that you highlight in the book. One is it creates an amazing amount of confidence to say, man, look at what we did do. I mean, I'm not where I want to be, because you never are, right? There's always this next place you want to go. But man, we really did some cool stuff, and it gives you confidence to know this next jump really isn't as far out maybe as I think. Mm-hmm. And then secondarily, fuels me and floods me with gratitude of where I am on the way to where I'm going. And I think that for me, oftentimes, that's one of the things in your book that's so useful and helpful, because it really does. It highlights, listen, we're going to be on this journey. Achievers achieve. That's what they do. And people listening to this podcast, nobody's tuning in for this podcast because they don't want to do cool stuff.
Exactly.
Because they're like, all right, man, we're going to find some stuff to do. But man, a lot of times they're not enjoying the journey. The what they're doing is they're like waiting for the next, they'll be happy when. This decade behind there, this kind of rearview mirror exercise, for me, it's just that confidence and gratitude. So I'd love you to just kind of talk about that stuff a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that story about him coaching people that way. When you do the exercise, it it gives you instant gratitude. Everybody talks about like, you should be grateful, but it's just a practical way to do it, because you'll notice things you missed, or things, especially as a high achiever, you ran by. Like I had a coach of mine once say, you need to go put your hand on every book you've written and say thank you and celebrate it. Cause like when people go, what's your celebration process? I'm like, oh, what? What? I'm on to so as people who like to do stuff, you kind of sprint to the next thing. And so it gives you a sense of gratitude. It also gives you a self-awareness, because you're no longer guessing. It's that your past leaves all these clues. And we as a culture will say things like, don't look back. You're not going that direction. And you lose so much of this real rich history. And so it gives you self-awareness. And then what's funny is, as you do it, you can't help but say, I want more of that. And you'll bump into things you forgot you loved. There's this sense of, oh, that's right, I really did enjoy that. Oh, why did I stop hanging out with that person? Why did I stop that sport? Why did I stop that hobby? Why did I stop calling clients that way? Or I used to be the king of no, thank you cards, and it filled me up to pour into other people. And then life got busy and I stopped that. So you inevitably go, I want to do more of that. And that's where the book kind of transitions into, okay, once you've got a sense of that, how do you turn those into practical, tactical goals you can actually do and accomplish, versus just, a lot of times when we talk about goals, they're kind of fuzzy and holistic and there's not steps. And I'm a step guy. I like to track stuff. I like to have progress. I think progress is one of the greatest feelings in the world. And I think there's a lot of people that never get to experience it. And there's a lot of sadness and emptiness that comes out of not having progress.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think then breaking down those goals into the different sizes that you did is really important, because oftentimes it's like you were saying, we have this larger than life elaborate thing that requires us to change so much about our normal, and all of us have an autopilot, right? We have a way we currently are going about making progress in our lives, professionally, relationally, financially, physically, spiritually. And when you go from autopilot on everything to manual flight, it's hard, and it's a different energy.
Yeah.
If you talk a little bit about breaking those goals down into the various links and steps, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So essentially, I like to think of it like a ladder, like a goal ladder. And most people only have 2 rungs on their ladder. They have the first step, the first day, and then they have the accomplishment. So they go, I want to make $1 million. And then they have the first call, and then the $1 million. Or they go, I want to lose 30 pounds. And they have the first walk around the neighborhood and lose 30 pounds. Or I want to write a book. And if a neighbor lets you borrow their ladder and came over and was like, hey, you're cleaning out your gutter, here's my ladder, and it had 2 rungs 12 feet apart from each other, you would say, this ladder is useless. Like, how do I get to the top? Like, I can't jump 12 feet in the air. Like, that's 2 feet above a basketball rim. And so the way I like to do it is I like to actionify your goal. That's one of the big things I teach is, okay, how do we take this thing we want to do and add some actions? Because they're like rungs on a ladder. So I'd much rather you have a rung every 6 inches. And if you did that and had a ladder and all you had to lift your foot was 6 inches, and which would be easier to climb, the one with 2 rungs or the one with 50 rungs, where you could make steady, joyful progress? So the way I break it down goal-wise is there's easy goals, middle goals, and guaranteed goals. And the easy goals are small. You can accomplish them in less than a week. They don't cost a lot of money. You try to have very few barriers into, kind of getting going. If your goal costs a lot of money to start, you're going to be hesitant. If it takes a lot of time that you don't have, you're going to be hesitant. And then as it progresses, you decide, I do want to get to the next level, where guys like us and women like, that are into this kind of topic talk about the next level all the time. And my argument there is not every goal deserves to be a middle goal. There's some goals you try and you go, not for me, like wasn't for me. And that's fine. So you start with a bunch of easy goals, and then you kind of narrow it down and go, I'm willing to increase my investment. I'm willing to increase the time. I'm willing to do more. And then eventually you get to the middle and you go, I'm really going to go for it. Like, I want the guaranteed goal, where I use the word guarantee because it's counterintuitive. But once you've got the momentum of an easy and a middle, there's no way you're not finishing that goal. Like that goal, like we've all been locked in like that. We're like, this is happening. Like I've invested so much and I have proof. I'm not guessing. I have the success of the easy goal. I have the success of the middle goal. So by the time I'm at the guaranteed level, I'm like, oh, it's on. Like this is happening. And I just think it makes it so much easier to accomplish. Now, the flip side of that is I'll tell people, dream about the guaranteed, like dream about the big thing, and then let's reverse engineer it, because nobody gets excited about an easy goal. That's the challenge. Nobody goes, like you would never call up Justin and be like, man, I'm going to walk half a mile around my neighborhood. I'm pumped. This is going to be crazy. Like you would never, that wouldn't fire you up. What you'd say to him is, dude, I'm going to do an ultra. Like in a year from now, I signed up for this ultra marathon, or I'm going to do this David Goggins thing, or I'm going to build a team. Awesome. That's a big, guaranteed, huge goal. Okay, how do we make it middle? All right, cool. How do we make it even smaller and more actionable, and we make it easy so we can climb our way there? So that's kind of how the ladder and the 3 different types of goals work.
No, that's awesome.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I just want to emphasize that for our advisors listening, like how immediately actionable this is for those that are doing or interested in doing like fee-based planning. Because often when you're talking to a client, right, it's like, well, what does retirement look like for you? Well, it could be 30 years out. They've not been there. They don't know.
And they're not excited about it either. Right, they're not like nobody. You go like, hey, you know how you're 40? Imagine you're 70. They're like, no, I won't. I'll never. One, they don't think they'll ever be 70. So there's your first problem. They're like, our culture hates admitting we age. Like that's your first challenge. Like, I don't know how to tell you this. You will be 70. Like this is happening. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's just flipping it backwards. Like, all right, what are the things that have brought value? So like building that list out, like that's an actionable step from an advisor standpoint. You do that with the client right away. Like, hey, let's make a list of the things that brought value to this point that you're excited about. And then, is it safe to assume that retirement for you is building more of those, like doing more of that and focusing on that? Like,
yeah, like because you can, when you do a list, you'll be able to see patterns and you'll go, wow, you really like 80% of your list is relationship based. So let's make sure your retirement sets you up for lots of relationship based activities. Like you're not, you might have the fantasy in your head. I see this sometimes where people go, when I retire, I'm going to move to Colorado at like 65. And you go, that's awesome. Colorado's beautiful. Now, I want to point out 80% of your list was about the people in your town who you love and do stuff with, and your family and relationship. I don't know at 65, you're going to then decide to become a hermit and live on a mountain in a town you've never been to, surrounded by people who have never met you. Like that, I don't know if that's aligned with who you really are. And then they go, oh, you're right. What I really want is to be able to ski twice a year and still have my home where I live right now, and then you can actually help them see who they are and where they should head.
Yeah. And then if you're, I was just going to say, if you're able to then take that as like, that's the big guaranteed goal we're working towards, and break that down to small, easy wins, like that's a powerful conversation as an advisor to come in, like, and then to gain trust and continue to build that rapport relationship of like, hey, just over this last year, let alone over our life experience relationship as an advisor with you, like we've developed all these wins in building towards it, and really being able to help to instill like with a sense of confidence, so that when crazy things like Monday, right, with the stock market, like phone calls start coming in, right, like there's ton of relationship there and track record to say, like, even regardless of what's going on here, like we've got these wins and we're on track.
Yeah, we're going to keep climbing the ladder. The ladder hasn't changed. There's, it's going to sway with the market. That's part of climbing a ladder. But you're right. You've got equity. You've got all those rungs behind you that go like, no, we've got progress. We've got momentum. And then you're not trying to get them to hold their breath between huge gaps where it's like, here's where you are. And then in 12 years, you'll get to do this kind of fun thing. Nobody gets motivated by that. Nobody. So having some wins along the way keeps people going, okay, I trust that Justin's got my back. I trust that we're making progress.
Yeah, I think this dials into so many things in this book, as well as one of your previous books, Soundtracks. That when I think about it, it's kind of like this is a funny question we ask is, if I was to sneeze right now, what would both of you say?
Bless you.
Bless you. Yeah.
Bless you.
And then the second question is always why? And the answer is nobody really knows because your parents said bless you when you sneezed. There are kind of funny responses out there. It's like this has existed in every culture since the beginning of documented time, where there's some version of bless you in every language that the people say it. Used to, one version is they say it because back in the day, originally it was like you were warding off an evil spirit leaving or entering your body. That was one version.
Yeah.
And then the most common was, well, it's a sign of well wishing because a sneeze might be a symptom of you coming down with something that you're getting sick, or so. Hey, all is well with you, bless you. But the most common reason today that we all say it is because we inherited that response.
Yeah,
we never decided it. We it was given to us, and I think one of the great things about your books, just theme wise, thematically throughout, is it's very much in line with doing life by design instead of doing life by default. Not inheriting a way forward from what everyone else has told you is this is the way forward. Instead, just deciding what's a rich life look like for you over the next 3 years. And what's a rich life look like for you in the past, the things you really enjoyed that really lit you up that we can take as a roadmap to say, we should probably include a lot of these things in the go forward future so that the game that we play is one we love. And I love what you wrote in the book. It's on playing the games is you're guaranteed to win a game when you make the rules.
And yeah, well, if it's my definition of success, then it's so much easier. It's really frustrating to try to win somebody else's game. And even if you get the prize, you don't enjoy it because it's not your prize. So you go, oh, wow, I got to the top of this other person's mountain and I hate this view. It's not what I was trying to. So yeah, if you play the game your way and go, this is what success looks like for me. I mean, I think about that. My in-laws have been really deliberate to build a life and a home and a community where my kids want to go back to. They awesome. Moved to a mountain town 15 years ago. We started vacationing there. We had no money, and they'd say, "Hey, you can come up to the mountains, stay with us for free." So 15 years later, my kids enjoy doing that. That was a deliberate oh, okay. So for them, that was valuable. And they still do a bunch of fun things and travel a bunch, but they knew, okay, if we want to have access to the grandkids, let's figure out how to shape our life where it leads to access to the grandkids.
That's so awesome. And the one is to reverse engineer into those things, I think is the critical component, because that's creating a family that people want to come back when they no longer have to is an amazing life objective for people who get into that. And so what kind of environment are you doing? We're building a house right now, for example, that my parents will live in part of it. Jamie's dad will live in part of it, my wife. And we've got rooms and things, but it's totally centered around having a place that everybody wants to be around, where the community can be there. Because for us, that's a big win. Now, there's some people that would be like, that would be hell. I don't want that.
That would be torture. I don't want Thanksgiving. Never mind. They all live there and never leave. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love it because you get to decide the game you're going to play. Justin on our team, he was in the financial business and came in, inherited a way forward, and Cody, who's also on our team, and they were really successful under the terms of what the game they gave them to play was. They said, hey, you check these boxes, you do these things, and you're going to win. They hated it. And Justin, you can certainly speak to that. But when they found a different game and now they're playing it as a team with us as a whole group, it's like, this is good. Well, it's called the same thing, but we are playing a very different game. So I think it's so critical to just back into that. Something fun I did too when I was going through your exercise on the decade or on the review mirror is I pulled out my iPhone and I went through my pictures of all the things that had happened over that 10-year period of time. And I actually wrote down, John, I wrote the age of my kids 10 years ago. So, we talked about this. We're empty nesters next week.
Same with us. We're 10 days out.
It's a party time, man. I'll be in Nashville soon too. So we'll have to connect.
Oh, nice.
But we wrote out that, 10 years ago, a decade ago, Gage was 10. Abby was 8. Now they're 18, they're 20. And we just looked at all the stuff that we had done together, all the things we did, the things to celebrate. And then you just get really excited about the present. And then the stokes the future. Because then you start putting on there 10 years from now, John, we may be grandparents 10 years from now.
It might not take 10, dude.
Like, let's hope it's not 2. Let's hope it's.
Yeah. Hey, love works the way love works. I don't know what to tell you. I think our first kid was at like 26, maybe 27. Yeah. That's why I was thinking about it.
But it's such an amazing thing to look at how has been done and how fast that time went over the last 10 years. Then thinking into the future, how quickly it's going to go. And it kind of stoked the fire to go, man, we can get after some cool stuff over this next 10 years.
Yeah, you can do a lot in a 10-year period. So, I think, again, a lot of it's where do you want to end up? How do you make that, where do I want to be tomorrow? And what can I do about it today? Where do I want to be tomorrow? What can I do about it today?
Yeah. And one last thing I want to talk about before we cut here is one of the things that I look at almost all the time as it relates to when you wrote the book Soundtracks is so many times I find this for myself. I find it for people that I love in my life, that we suffer unnecessarily for the stories we tell ourselves so many times. And it's listening to outdated, not true, not helpful, not kind soundtracks that we either inherited and it just lives there, or we just continue to hold on to, even if it's no longer helping us or serving us well. Would you, for just the last 5 minutes, just talk a little bit about those soundtracks that and how they work?
Yeah. So soundtracks was a phrase that I wrote about for repetitive thoughts. So a thought you listen to again and again and again. And my argument was that your life runs on soundtracks. You have a soundtrack for every job you've ever had, for every person you dated, for every city you've ever lived in. And we often don't notice that they're even playing, but they change the entire moment. And so the book teaches you how to retire your broken soundtracks, how to replace them with new ones, and how to repeat those new ones so often they become as automatic as the old ones. So in your world, an example of a broken soundtrack would be money is greedy, or success is selfish. Success is evil. And when I get close to my definition of what success is, I'll self-sabotage so I stay under it. And I guarantee you've had clients where you had to say, it's okay for you to be successful. You've worked, that's a result of you working really hard and serving a lot of people. That's not a bad thing. I think you need to, so money, the idea of money has so many broken soundtracks around it. I had a friend whose mom used to say, when they saw a nice house, she'd say something like, you'd only have a house like that if you were selling drugs. That's the only way you could get a house like that. And eventually my friend had to say, Mom, I'm successful and have a nice house and I'm not selling drugs. But that was really a soundtrack that she had probably heard from her parent and was continuing forward. And my friend had to kind of stop that and go, no, we're not doing that. Friend of mine, Stephen Scoggins, his dad used to say, Scoggins don't get ahead, Scoggins get by. And he said that to him 100 times growing up. Imagine if your dad, who you look up to, is going, hey, remember, we don't get ahead, we just get by. And my friend had to, retire that broken soundtrack and go, no, I'm not, getting by isn't enough. I'm built to get ahead, and I can get ahead and serve a bunch of people. And so that's what a soundtrack is. It's really my take on how do you build a mindset that works for you, not against you. That, and the core premise is essentially your thoughts turn into your actions turn into your results. And all too often we over focus on the results we want, but we've never changed the underlying soundtracks that are shaping everything. So we don't end up getting the results.
Man, I love that. And I love even just a little helpful tips and tricks in that. Whereas I'm not a bad leader. I'm just a new leader, right? The way where you can, that kind of thing. Or I don't know how to do that. Add the word yet. I just want to do it yet. And it's just those little things that help free your thinking to not be a prisoner of your past,
well, I'm bad at numbers. I guarantee clients tell you sometimes, well, I'm not a math person. I'm bad at money. I'm bad at numbers. And I always go, forever? You're 42. You might live till 82. You got 40 years. We can work on this. But there's that, it's a label. It's a soundtrack label where they decided, I'm bad at numbers, therefore I'll never look into them. I'll feel shame when I try to. I won't give myself the time to actually learn them. And it's kind of at one point you were bad at walking, but you were like, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. Crawling's been pretty good, but I feel like it's time to walk. So that's what, for me, soundtracks is a really easy handle for a way to change your mindset.
Yeah. Well, for everybody listening, I just want to say a couple things. One, take a second and just go back to, you pull out your phone, get your highlight reel going of the things that you so loved, that give you energy, that give you strength. It's just going to be a great source of confidence and source of gratitude. And then second, where do you want to go? Think about how much you can accomplish. And then let's reverse engineer that into the ladders, into the rungs on the ladder. So you're not trying to climb to the roof with two, and enjoy the journey. You get to design this game. You get to create the game you're going to play. You might as well love the game, love the battle, love the fight. And because guess what? You're going to be in one for the rest of your life. That's the way we do things.
It's an everyday sport. It's an everyday sport. Right. Yeah. Life is an everyday sport. There's times where I'm like, man, it's weird. I still have to do this. Like I have to still build and grow. And it's like, yeah, every day, I have to work on my mindset every day. I have to work on my business every day. I can't take a month off from my marriage. Like I'd be like, I hope it'll be fine. I'm going to kind of coast for the next month.
You're going to be
but there's joy in that. There's growth in that.
Yeah. There's one last thought on this is the Arthur Brooks. I don't know if you've read any of
this. Strength to Strength. I read.
Oh yeah. And he just has such a great way of breaking down like the art and science of happiness. And he talks about, which is so in line with what we're talking about here today, is he says, the micronutrients of happiness are really enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And he breaks down what each of those mean. But the one I want to camp on just for 2 seconds before we close here is satisfaction. You cannot have happiness without satisfaction. You can't have satisfaction without overcoming difficult things, without accomplishing things that were not handed to you, not easy. And so love the battle, love the fight, knowing that there's always another part of the journey, there's always another mountain to climb. It actually is a source of fulfillment if you can enjoy where you are on your way to where you're going, which goes back to, hey, look in the rearview mirror a bit here. Let's count the blessings. Let's really marinate in those. And no, man, it's been awesome to have you on, John. I so appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, dude. This was a blast. Hopefully I'll see you at another New York Life event.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. And we'll give out, we're going to give away 10 of your books.
Awesome. That's babies need shoes. Let's go.
Babies need shoes. Go. Yeah.
And there's if you're an audio person and you're listening to a podcast, you probably are. I read the audiobook. There's a ton of bonuses in all my audiobooks. It's super fun. So it'll probably be the only audiobook you don't have to fast forward and listen to on a higher speed. Like I talk pretty quickly. There's a lot of content. I've never met somebody who's like, I had to fast forward because, some of these audiobooks you get and like, dude, the 1x speed is killing me. And so I guarantee you won't have to listen to me faster than 1x. You will 1x that book.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, full transparency. That's how I listened to it the first time. As I would.
Totally.
No, I was riding my riding lawnmower, listening to your.
That counts, dude. That when people are like, "Do audiobooks count?" I'm like, "Tell a blind person audiobooks don't count." Maniac. Like what? Of course they count.
But I will say that there's some books that you just want to go back and you need something so we also ended up getting the physical one as well, and I highly recommend that.
I do the same thing.
There are a lot of nuggets.
The audiobook is like an audition. I audition your book via audio, and then if I'm like, oh, I'm gonna need this in print. There's some books I own all 3 versions because I'm like, I want it on my Kindle when I've got my Kindle on a plane. I'm not gonna bring every book, and I want to be able to search an idea really easily. So there's, a real home run book for me. I own all 3 versions.
Yeah, exactly. And again, can't thank you enough for being on. Thank you all for listening today. We can't recommend Jon's book enough. Like I said, we're actually going to give away 10 copies. The instruction information to be able to get a free book for a chance to win one, you just look down in the show notes and all the information will be there. Thank you all again for listening. Take care.